Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Long climb up to San Donato, one of the highest points, if not the highest point of the circuit. The run down to the Arrabbiata corners in the middle is so important to get right, and this is a downforce track. You have to be alert to all of these medium speed corners that are out there, and the switchback opening sectors through the likes of the Borgia San Lorenzo and the like. It is going to be an all-important showcase out there. It's 59 laps here today, so 309.5 kilometers. 2 tire compounds have to be used, and of course DRS will be active from about lap 3 onwards. So that's going to be important to keep in the back of the mind, is how these drivers are going to work it. But today has been about a tyre game when it has come to who's got what, Caitlin, because very simply, drivers haven't been too happy with their tyre choices, and we have seen to the point of carcasses blowing out in some of the other races we've seen.
Well, the really interesting thing that I've seen is that not only are drivers not too happy with the life of these tyres, with drivers blowing the mediums, for example, but we're also being told that drivers aren't really liking the hard tyres either, so we're not really expecting to see any long, hard tyre runs. There you see the potential tyre strategies. I think the standard will probably be the one you see at the top there, about 17 laps on the softs, followed by another soft stint, and then mediums to the end. You can see on the very bottom that 3 stoppers are absolutely plausible as well, especially if you want to avoid those hard tyres. But the really interesting thing today is going to be that balance between actually preserving the tyre life while avoiding the hard compound of tyre. This could be so strategic.
It really could. Let's talk championship, though, for a moment, because Jordan Gronkowski is top of the sim speed standings with a race margin in hand, 34 to the good over Jacob Reed, with Jorge Martinez in third. Darren Parker drops down to 4th position after his non-finish last time out, and 5th currently belongs to Eduardo Radice. Then it's Volta Lux and Timothy Vaughan 6th and 7th, Connor Pooler in 8th, Adam Gleeson 9th, and with 1 start this season, Leopold Steneros still holds that 10th place with his 5th place finish at the 2nd round of the championship. The question to be here, Caitlin, is who stops Gronk?
Well, unfortunately, it won't be Darren Parker because I do not see him on the entry list. So we don't have one of our top 5 drivers here today. There you see the iRacing championship standings. So we have 2 different sets of championship decidings, or championship standings, sorry, depending on whose point system you are looking at. According to that one, of course, Eduardo Radice is one to consider. And so far, he's actually been closest to Radice on the practice server, being less than 1/10 of a second off his times. But that's very different, of course, to the actual race pace that we're going to be seeing. And that's going... Oh, and here's the qualifying results.
Yes, and that is Jordan Gronkowski on pole position, 1:16.087. Eduardo Radice, who has been lightning quick in qualifying, is alongside him on the front row. Marcus Pleschberger, first start, car 22. He is starting to gain his iRating. He goes 3rd alongside Jacob Reed, the reigning champion, in 4th after their incredible showcase over at Suzuka only 2 weeks ago. Connor Pooler and Anthony Cat house the 3rd row of the grid, with Edward Apare RE in 7th and Volta Lux, the 2nd of the Austrians, in 8th place. Adam Gleeson starts 9th, and it's the raging Canadian alongside with him. Kent Nielsen rounds out the top 10. Doriano Ricciuti finds himself in 11th. Ray Griffioen is there in 12th, with Dan Piazza in 13th place. There's Brad Newman. He's 1.4 seconds adrift in 14th. Klaus Siemitz, nice to see him out racing. He's 15th, with Lyle Pinar in 16th position. Then it's John Pat Kelly and George Van Rensburg on row number 9. It's then Paul O'Regan down in 19th position. Florian Kameyer makes 20. And the last 3 drivers are Jason Green, Cedric Beale, and Mark Van Dalen, making up the 23 here today. Van Dalen, a 1:28.2, not representative over qualifying time, but it is a long haul here today over towards the opening section of the track, which of course leads that San Donato section, and the all-important runs through Luco, Poggio Secco, Materazzi, Borgia San Lorenzo, Casanova, Savelli, and then the Arrabbiatas. That's going to be what the key is going to be. 59 lap starts now. We are underway. What a stormer from the 3rd row of the grid from Anthony Cat. He'll immediately challenge forward. Gronk leads a pyramid towards turn number 1 as they dive through. Radice trying to go around the outside of San Donato, trying to get some run off the exit. It's clean through the first 10 cars. They rush through into the chicanes for the first time, but Gronk is clear and losing a little bit of ground. From 3rd position is Marcus Pleschberger. He's back to bed. 1 car in the gravel. Kameyer having another poor start to his race.
Yeah, we didn't see how that happened. Here's Marcus Pleschbauer, one of the most impressive drivers in qualifying, to go 3rd with only the 22nd seed in this iRace. You can see a little further back, Brad Newman fighting for position, currently P11, and you can see he's on the soft tyres, one of only 2 drivers to have started on the softs. Now, Jake, I'm afraid we appear to have lost our first driver. Dan Piazza has been involved, potentially with Florian Kameyer, who we saw off the road.
Yeah, so that is where the drama comes into play. Piazza out, Florian Kammeyer down the field, and only Kent Nielsen and Brad Newman starting on the soft as they rush through the final chicanes. Then the Biondettis heading to Bucine corner here. This long 180-degree left-hand bend that you just have to wait for an eternity to put the power down to go out there and attack. And already drivers looking to peak, see if they have an angle heading up the hill towards San Donato to make a move. Here's going to be one of them, Doriano Ricciuti, looking to the outside then of George Van Rensburg for position. George holding that inside line, but you can get that traction early on the outside. Luco is going to be here. Look out, Doriano making moves. He's back up to 12.
Indeed, in his home Grand Prix. Great start from Doriano Ricciuti there, and a straightforward manoeuvre to cap it all off. So Gronkowski leads. He's already got 1 second over Eduardo Radice, and that's very important because remember, from the end, from the end of the next lap, we will have DRS activated. And when the DRS is available, you have to make sure that you're over a second ahead of your opponent. And there's what happened to Kammeyer. It seems to have been completely by himself, and he's avoided the barriers, so he should get away with no damage whatsoever. But that does not explain what happened to Dan Piazza.
No, that is really, really weird out there from Florian Kammeyer, and it was a case of Piazza right off the start. He actually got a tag. He was going for the middle of the circuit off the very start of the race. He tagged Brad Newman's rear right tyre with his front left, and it must have broken his suspension because Piazza immediately retired afterwards.
So here comes Jacob Reed now in the slipstream from Eduardo Radice. They don't have DRS yet because the detection zone was technically on the second lap, not the third lap. But at the end of this lap, they will get it for the very first time. And what I was going to say before, as we see a move a little further back, there's Klaus Siemitz versus Jason Green. But what I was going to say is that if you're within 1 second of the car in front of you as you go through the detection zone, you're able to slipstream through on the straight with the advantage of the drag reduction system, which is extremely important here at Mugello, where you have such a long straight.
And that's such a big boon, a massive advantage here as that overtaking aid to go and make some progress. There is Eduardo Radice with the fastest lap check mark, even though Gronkowski had a faster lap than him on that last run through. John Gronkowski, crucially, had an off-track incident point on his lap, so therefore his fastest lap does not count until he validates with a clean lap. Jacob Reed shadowing in the wings, hoping that he can fly through, and there is the light on the dash. 1 green light indicates that he's got it. 2 indicates you can use it in the zone. 4 indicates that you can absolutely fly. There's the 4, and now he will use it and try and get as much pace as he can up the hill. 313 kilometers an hour, bottoming out, moving to the inside and trying to dive through and get that pass sorted. Makes it happen, moves up into second, and Jacob Reed, who's been the bridesmaid in the last 3 rounds of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, is currently the bridesmaid for a 4th consecutive race to Gronk.
Big advantage down the straight. He was about half a second, maybe 3 or 4 tenths behind him coming off that final corner, and by the end of the straight there was no holding him back. Looks like Ray Griffon has also got past a car in that, George Van Rensburg. We're about to see a replay. I expect this is Dan Piazza's incident at the start of the race. There's the contact, and you can see that his suspension is not very happy with that. He's got no steering whatsoever. The steering is completely broken, and with the front left tyre bouncing around, unfortunately that doesn't lend itself to a particularly fast car. So out of the race immediately goes Dan Piazza. Florian Kammeyer has a spin, but he has kept going, and we have 22 cars in the race.
The luckiest driver out of all of that, must be said, was Jason Green. He very nearly got collected on the opening lap, and it could have been a disaster for a number of drivers in the field. So there is that sense that drivers are lucky here on the opening lap that it wasn't anything bigger. Jacob Reed, with that aid of DRS, sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1:20.2 and an extra Sim Speed Championship point in the back pocket. Second group on the road, being currently housed by Marcus Pleschberger, with Anthony Catt, Connor Pooler, Volta Lux, Kent Nielsen and trying to hold on to the back. Edward Apare Ari now through the S's here to Materazzi corner. There's Brad Newman and Adam Gleeson racing about for the top 10.
Yeah, they swapped places twice on the straight according to the timing screen, and that's not good news for Brad Newman because, of course, starting on the softs, you always intend to make your way up through the order just for that strategic advantage. But yeah, Gleeson got through on the straight, and then Newman was able to get back through in the corner. We're going to see a replay of that now. So Gleeson's in the darker coloured car, and he'll have the DRS wide open. Should go through coming up to the braking zone. This is the fight for 10th position. But then, of course, Brad Newman is able to leave the braking slightly later, get back to the inside of the car, and finds the traction into turn 2. Good racing from Newman, not to give that one up and let it go by, but I think they both lost time in that one in terms of the net order.
Yeah, it's very easily done out there, and if you lose that time, if you lose that potential to go and really attack, you'll lose the group that goes forward. A little search to the inside from Volta Lux on Connor Pooler, but this is what we call, Caitlin, a DRS train. Everybody's got that driver aid on the back that helps them against everyone else, which effectively negates it as wide slightly when Anthony Catt there through San Lorenzo, I believe that was. So that was that was Poggio Secco. So very easily that could have been some trouble for Catt, but he's going through. The one driver who I think is getting bottled up in this entire group is Kent Nielsen on the softs. He wants to try and get through, but because he can't use those soft tyres, his strategy is getting balked currently.
Yeah, that's the trouble with starting on softs, of course. You've got to make your way through the field, otherwise you end up being put back, and then of course you've all got to make a stop later on for a different compound of tyre, and everyone else is going on to softer and faster tyres than you, so that's why you've got to have that advantage earlier rather than later. This part of the course is a lot of fun. The Biondetti chicane, named of course after pre-war Grand Prix racer Clement Biondetti. And then you head through the Bucine left-hander, the final turn, which is slightly banked and gives you a fantastic slingshot down the straight. And then, of course, you get that DRS train in full effect, because it's easy to pass someone who's draggy as heck with their rear wing fully in the airflow. But when, of course, the car in front of you also has the rear wing letterbox open, as well as the slipstream from the car in front, suddenly you're not quite as fast as you think you were compared to them.
Yeah, that's very, very telling at this moment as they rush into Materazzi corner, then into San Lorenzo, and they can sense then the next group, not necessarily out of this race right now, being led by Brad Newman, and you can see how far it goes back. Almost everybody is in a train, has something to work with. Paul O'Regan, all the way back in 20th position at the moment, has something to race for, and this is a Paul O'Regan who has had 3 points finishes this season of 8th, 8th and 9th, and has a lowest finish of 11th. O'Regan has been the Mr. Consistency, always finding a way to get in and around that top 10.
He has indeed, and there have been a few drivers along those lines as well, which is very important for both championships, because of course both the SimSpeed and the iRacing point system will reward consistency, drivers who are able to score points consistently over every race. Back to the straight we go, more DRS training. Looks to me as if Fleshberger is slightly closer to the back of Eduardo Radice than he was a lap ago, but of course, sorry, that's not even who we're watching, is it? I'm getting completely driven away by the different liveries that everyone has. But yeah. Oh, it is Fleshberger. My apologies. I'm getting confused by the timing screen.
Yeah, so it's Anthony Catt who looks like he's trying to close in, but the issue that you've got is that Pleshberger's got a car that's really well set up for cornering here today. It's something that Anthony Catt is struggling to match with here through the fearsome Arrabbiata corners. Now, Arrabbiata as a corner has itself a little bit of steep history going back to the Ferraris and the early to mid-2000s, because the legendary Ferraris out there, the 2004 car, it was a case of, I can run the Arrabbiata corners here at Mugello flat back in the day of unlimited testing. I'm pretty sure this machinery can't run the Arrabbiatas flat.
Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? Back in the day, this was basically a Ferrari test track, and they used to have a completely separate test team. He used to come to places like this, and of course the Fiorano test track back at their home base, and they used to test basically every day when they weren't racing, and sometimes when they were as well.
Oh,
And I've just
Radice.
seen that apparently Radice is up to second now, slipstreaming his way past Jacob Reed. So yes, they're still dropping back a little from Gronkowski, but that's not stopping them from gaining time in their own race, gaining positions in their own race. And Eduardo Radice, the biggest gainer on that particular lap, slipstreaming his way past Jacob Reed, who didn't have the benefit of DRS from someone in front of him.
Up the top of the hill, drivers are so reliant on saving that energy recovery system, harvesting that battery, that we have seen a lot of drivers getting caught at 280, 290, making those moves. Mark van Dalen, by the way, up 8 spaces in this race, now up into 15th position after his move on Lyle Pinar for place, and he is the biggest mover right now, and he could very comfortably jump a couple more. It's George van Rensburg just a couple seconds down the road, so there's certainly a sense that you can make places in the opening laps here, but this has been a patient start to the race. There is your race leader, Jordan Gronkowski, lap 9 here at 59, and he's only 2.2 seconds, currently 2.1 seconds clear at the front of the field. And they get the sense right now with Gronkowski that he's hoping for a bit more. Jacob Reed travelling back through at a rate of knots, soars into San Donato, and will come out of it in P2.
Yep, straightforward move, but that's what you need. Brad Newman, meanwhile, also passing Edouard Apari-Ari. There he goes, up into 9th position as it stands. A little bit of moving about further back as well. That's Green, Pina, and everyone around them. But yeah, the good thing about this circuit is that, or the thing about this circuit when you're racing with other cars, is that, of course, you don't necessarily want to wait for the long straight, because then you're stuck behind someone for an entire lap, and that will cost you a heck of a lot of time. But there's not really any other overtaking opportunities on this track. You've got to get creative, and then you've got to build up that advantage before you get to the straight. Otherwise, they might just be able to fly straight back past you again, just like Reed flew back past Eduardo Radice.
Yeah, it's very difficult in this machinery as we watch through the Corintaio. A number of drivers making their progress. Here's Volta Lux, 6th gear through the Biondetti, flicking up into 7th, and now hoping for a chance to attack Connor Pooler, who he's been staring at the back of the orange machine in front for a long time. Brad Newman is the one driver making moves in the pack at the moment, the only one really giving a firm form of chase
Radice
at this moment. And yet, Eduardo Radice is back through into 2nd position, so he's made the trade as they go through. But Marcus Pleschberger is doing everything right in this race. He's got just enough of a gap through the entirety of the lap to cover off the straights.
He does indeed, and that's why we're seeing such a DRS train forming, because he has that pace in the straight line. Now we're going to see Radice's move, and it's going to be very similar to what we've seen in the past, where he just catches Reed at the end of the straight, and there's nothing that Jacob can do about that. We also saw a move on that last lap. I think Richie Uti's up to 11th past Gleason as well, and again, would have been a very straightforward overtake in a straight line. That's not to say that it's not a good overtake, because sometimes the best thing that you can do is do it as quickly and as cleanly as you possibly can. You lose basically no time when you make a straightforward pass on a straight with DRS. You may actually gain time in doing that as well. So in many ways, it's the best kind of overtake. The trouble, of course, is that you've had to sit behind someone for an entire lap, which is what I was saying before. So now Reed's just got to do that and wait for his next opportunity.
Looking pretty close there for Kent Nielsen and co. Volta Lux through Scarperia and the Pelagio onto the front stretch, though. You're getting a sense that these drivers all have different strategies. Reed back through and trying to trade and gain a little bit here, gain a little bit there. But the issue that they're running into with this trading, Caitlin, is that they're losing a 1/10 of a second a lap trying to make these trades, trying to gain these places. They can't keep the lap time to Gronk at the front of this field as it currently stands, and everybody up at San Donato is searching for moves, like Paul O'Regan on Lyle Pinar. Pinar, the one driver going backwards at the moment. He was up inside the top 15. Now he's staring at 20th.
Yep, not a great race from Lyle Pienaar here, although he is the lowest seeded driver from South Africa there, and currently under pressure from Paul O'Regan. But yeah, 4 moves in 4 laps between Reed and Radice. This is a good fight for second, but even though they could theoretically be helping each other to catch up to Gronkowski using that slipstream and that DRS, and hopefully not impeding each other too much in the corners, it really doesn't seem to be working out that much, because of course Gronkowski is still extending his lead, not by too much. There's not really much of a difference between the two of them per lap. It's come up by about half a second in the last 5 laps, but even so, we're going to see another move again here as Radice goes side by side with Reed, and that's 5 moves in just as many laps. Incredible.
It's all it needs to be, really. That's what they're trading about with, and that's what's making this race interesting for them, as you get a sense of they're all going through. Now, we've got our first taker in the pits. It's George van Rensburg. 13th lap. He gets off 12 laps only on the mediums. This is aggressive from George van Rensburg. That indicates 3 stop as he moves to softs.
Yeah, we saw 14 laps was the expected minimum tyre life on the soft tyres, and of course that is the absolute minimum, so to come in earlier than that is a little bit aggressive. We often see drivers running it longer, especially on the soft tyres, to gain the absolute maximum out of those tyres that they possibly can. But of course, as we were explaining on the lead up to this race, we've seen drivers going down to the carcass during practice, and you don't want to let your tyres hit that cliff, as they say. You will always lose out as a result of that. One thing to note, though, which I think we've already brought up, is that was off the medium tyres, not off the softs. So you're right, that is very strange, and it definitely hints at a 3-stopper.
Yeah, so George van Rensburg looking for a massive undercut here to jump up through the order. He will lose the slipstream on the straights, but he will gain back with fresh rubber and the ability to attack. Now, weather will play an important part in today's racing. We've got northeasterly winds, but not as much as maybe some drivers have been thinking about. Only 11 kilometers an hour, which isn't going to be doing too much to push drivers out of their comfort zone. This is the sort of circuit where you do catch a random gust of wind, just because you do have so much hillage around these Tuscany mountains to really give that opportunity to say, you know what, you might catch a straight area where it does open out, especially down the hill towards Casanova, where these drivers hit right now.
I'm going to start using the word hillage instead of elevation. I really like that one, Jake, and it reminds me of at the first round of the championship when I forgot the word distance and I said kilometerage, and I'm not going to let myself live that one down, let alone anyone else. But yes, this track does have a good deal of hillage, which is one of the things that makes it so popular. If you look at the little bump that they rise over into the hairpin at Corinteo, and then of course slightly downhill through the Biondetis, it's really not as straightforward a track as it potentially could be. I've just seen as well, Mark van Dalen's lost a few positions, and I think he's had a spin, Jake.
He was the biggest mover in the field, and that might just be the end of Mark van Dalen's race. And that is a big, big shame. And that is a weird place to have an instant there, because that is coming out of the the Pelagio, which is a weird place to have an accident. So here through Scarperia, he gets a little bit aggressive over the curves, and over the exit of the corner, he just catches the AstroTurf wrong. He desperately hits the brakes to try and save it, but those barriers are so close, and he very nearly caught, I would say, Stan and someone else who was there watching about in that section. That could have so easily have been a bigger disaster than it was, but Mark van Dalen is out.
Good job it wasn't a grass bank, eh? We don't want a repeat of that Phillip Island stunt from Ray Lombardi, but even so, the gravel nearly caught him. We're going to see another replay here, and this is Jason Green making a move on Cedric Beale. Yes, very good. Has Cedric changed his livery? That's annoying.
Well, some would say it's annoying, but of course drivers can change their liveries race to race if they so choose to. So he's deciding to go for something a little bit different out there and hope that he's got what he wants from it. Lap 15 here of 59, and you really are getting a sense that this group right now, Edward Apariari on the back of it here, is all getting a little bit stuck. But in comes Anthony Catt to the pit first real taker. Now, Cat's someone who's known to play the long game, so to see Anthony Cat coming in first is a huge indicator of this circuit.
And from 5th position as well, so definitely a considerable contender in this race. And looks as if he's going onto soft tyres as well. So the strategy today is go onto softs and push. There's Anthony Cat rejoining the race in 20th position, and he does have traffic. Sorry, I was looking at someone else. This is Anthony Cat rejoining in 20th position with pretty much no traffic. Should catch Florian Kammerer before long, but Kammerer actually has a little bit of clean air in front of him as well. And there's George van Rensburg, who went for that big undercut before and is still rather in no man's land, which to be honest is actually what he was hoping for in this race, because now of course he's able to push on those soft tyres. I guess that does make sense, Jake, because this circuit being such a traction dependent circuit with all of these sweepers and the elevation and all of that, you want to be on a tyre that's giving you grip and giving you confidence.
You really do, and we do get that sense there that drivers are pushing, and it's a case of about 1.5 seconds a lap, and there is going to be coverage in the pit, and no surprises, Kent Nielsen is going to come off of his set of softs, 17 laps. He was able to manage on those, so he will now dive for the pit lane, try and cover off Anthony Cat as much as he can. We'd expect it's going to be another set of softs maybe for Ken Nielsen. He will have to pay the piper back at some point in time, and in fact it's not. It's going to be the medium, so he's going to get the medium stint out of the way now, and we might expect it to be short because he's got to try and get that run. Cat dispatching of Florian Kammerer. There is Kent Nielsen, and that is a much bigger gap than he was hoping for. This is big from Anthony Cat's race.
Indeed, there is Cat making a move on Lyle Pina around the outside, and that's the moves create. Oh, and he's spun! Anthony Cat has lost it in a plume of smoke, manages to keep it off the racing line, but that is not going to do his new tyres any good, or indeed his race. Disaster for Anthony Cat on his second outlap.
Well, he made a fantastic move there at Luco Corner, but the key is that the Poggio Secco is always the counteract to Luco. Flies around the outside, brilliant on the grip, but was he pushing a bit too hard? The car just snapping there over around turn 3. Yeah. And just like that, all that hard work has gone away. Now in comes Jacob Reed from 3rd position. The reigning champion makes his bid now for his first pit stop, lap 17, going to 18.
Yep, Edward Apari-Ari and Adam Gleeson also in. Gleeson just lost a place to Ray Griffey-Owen. We've also seen a pit stop from Cedric Beale, and notably, he's the first driver to try out the hard tyres today, which we were told are not the ideal tyres to be on, but who knows, I will be keeping an eye on him just in case. But yeah, plenty of pit stops happening, and funnily enough, Brad Newman, one of the drivers we were expecting to pit first, is still yet to make his stop. So the medium tyre runners here, you can't help but feel that they're nowhere near the end of their tyre life. And every stop that they're making now is completely strategic and setting them up for the rest of the race. So now we've got to see how long Brad Newman can go and if this benefits him in any way, shape or form.
Well, it will confirm into an aggressive 2-stop strategy because he'll go soft, medium. He's definitely got the medium covered, but the longer he can go on his set of softs, the less likely he needs to spend much time on the mediums that he might not have as much comfort with. Up the hill goes the likes of Kent Nielsen and co, heading towards Scarperia, all bottled up behind Lyle Pina. Cat there, Apari-Ari there, George van Rensburg, all there, all looking, having a search at Corantayo. Not the place to get it done. Here goes Apari-Ari around the outside of the Corantayo, and side by side, 2 wide, 2 deep, and the Biondettis. Wow. Oh, fantastic. And he'll still fight down to Bucine, the final corner, and still Apari-Ari looks for clearance. Pino with no grip balks the run of Anthony Cat. Sensational stuff. In comes Pino. Watch out on the straight.
Who says that cameramen should only focus on the top 10 in a race? We've got fantastic stuff going on for 13th, 14th, further back as well. Plenty of cars ducking into the pits, but look at Apari-Ari leaving his braking later. Contact. Oh, and they touch and around. Is that Anthony Cat again?
Yes.
Oh, what a shame.
Oh, it's a real kick in the teeth for Anthony Cat because there was netcode involved in that one. and it was a very, very hefty hit. Anthony Cat from pillar to post here today at Mugello, dropping back down the order. Still in this race, though, you've got Volta Lux, who is through on Markus Pleshberger. So the Austrians have changed positions, and it was into turn one while we were focused on some incredible racing further back down through the pack. It was comfortable. It was an easy move, and one you absolutely love to see. Now, keep an eye out on the front of this field, because all of a sudden, as Jacob Reed is scything through his opponents, Eduardo Radice is catching Jordan Gronkowski here.
He is indeed. The current gap is less than 2 seconds for the first time in about 10 laps time, which is always good to see, because right before the pit stages is when you want to see the race get exciting. There's Klaus Siemitz into the pit lane, Brad Newman into the pits. We expected him to come in a little earlier than this, so he's really left it late. And of course, Ray Griffioen is in the pits as well. Fastest lap currently held by Jacob Reed. Don't forget about him, because of course he is the top driver who has made his pit stop. He's pushing like heck, and of course, with this particular circuit having such a long pit lane, it's going to be a little touch and go as to whether Jordan Gronkowski comes out in the lead here after his stop.
Well, the gap's down to 25.6 seconds. I think this might be Gronk losing the race lead outright here. Kent Nielsen here in P8 has got behind him Edward Apariari out of those who have pitted. Brad Newman slotted out just behind them, with George van Rensburg and Florian Kameyer now going at it here. George unable to find a way through. Florian will have the help of his brother as his spotter, Hendrik Kameyer, who will be giving him a little bit of a helping hand, but to the outside of the Correntino, using the drive off of the exit. Oh, it's just beautiful. Artwork of an overtake by George van Rensburg.
Fantastic stuff. The South African up into P11 as it stands. Of course, we still have to keep an eye on the effective order of this race, because it's going to change about later on. Look at Jacob Reed, the first driver to do this circuit in under 80 seconds. Great stuff. And that's a move. Is that Apari on Kent Nielsen there as well? So that's for 8th position. As I was going to say, the order's going to change a lot.
Yeah, so remember, Kent's on fresh mediums rather than fresh softs, so that's why he's going to be dropping a couple places here in these stages. But you feel that drivers are looking to push and try and get themselves as far as they can. If they can go another 7 laps out there and push forward, they could even be on for a one-stop strategy here today, which we haven't talked about too much. Now, here's the difference, soft versus hard. Cedric Beale right now is running about 3.5 seconds off the pace of Jacob Reed. So that really does give you a showing that it is a race today all about tyre life and who's got what and who's going to attack with what. But you really do get a feeling that this might be a case of how aggressive do the two-stop strategies want to be, or even if there's a case here for Jordan Gronkowski and co to move to 1, because the track temperature out there, Caitlin, is just 21 degrees. It's 28 degrees out there. I would say it's rather cold out there today compared to what we normally traditionally see from Mugello, which we normally see mid to high 30s.
Yeah, ambient temperature about 21 Celsius right now. To be honest, I would take that living in the UK with it being 10 degrees ambient Celsius outside. But of course, this is supposed to replicate midday in Italy, and Florence, Italy at that, which I've heard is a very nice part of the world. But yeah, one thing you tend to find is that as the track gets cooler, the tyres work better because they're less melty. They actually grip the road a little bit better in the cooler conditions, although not too cool, because if you start to get down to like icy conditions, then obviously that will affect them as well. 20 degrees, 21 degrees ambient tends to be quite a good middle ground there. And I can imagine that the drivers are all quite happy with the ambient conditions as it is, and not too fussed about the tyres overheating. Meanwhile, Pleshberger and Lux and also Connor Pooler are in the pits, so 3rd, 4th and 5th making their stops, as Jacob Reed's going to pass all of them, and quite considerably. He's now within 20 seconds of the leader, and I would say threatening, if not guaranteed, to take the overall lead when the stops happen.
Well, look at the pit lane time for Marcus Pleschberger right now. 23, 24, 25 seconds in the lane and transferring out 30 seconds. Lux with 28.7 was able to get the jump in the stop. So Walter Lux comes out and behind Brad Newman at that point as well. And the likes of Adam Gleeson now will have to try and attack. Remember, he's got tyres up to temperature. Everyone else doesn't. And through turn 2, brilliantly done. Through the Poggio Secco, pushed out wide is Connor Pooler on his outlap. George Van Rensburg trying to sneak away through, but he's not going to find it at Materazzi corner. And just like that, Pooler just about holds on to station. But this is a case of, with the work that's been done by Jacob Reed, he's given himself 8 seconds here at the front of the field at least.
Yeah, now that may look damning, especially if you look at the telemetry there, Jacob Reed versus Jordan Gronkowski, but you have to remember there are a lot more factors at play here. For example, yes, we pretty much know at this point that Reed will take the lead of the race, but for how long? Remember, of course, Gronkowski and Radice are yet to make their stops. When they do that, they will suddenly have the fresher tyres and the newer tyres, and it may be at this point, as is that Paul O'Regan taking a look Eduardo Pari. It's Brad Newman and Walter Lux, my apologies. Similar livery for Newman and Apariari, but they're going to go side by side down the straight now. Lux gets it ahead, and yes, Brad Newman will get the slipstream. Further behind them, Pleschberger and Gleeson have a little laggy scrap amongst themselves. But yes, of course, at this point in the race, you also have to start to consider, is Reed going to end up having to make one more pit stop than Gronkowski and Radice? Because if he does, then he's still got 15 seconds of net time to gain.
Well, that's going to be the question, whether it's going to be a 1 or a 2 now from Gronkowski and Radice, because they are playing effectively a game of chicken at the front of this field. Neither one of them want to pit at this moment in time, but some stage they're going to have to go. And in comes the race leader, John Gronkowski, 24 laps. He decides to come in, and Eduardo Radice does the wise thing and follows him in. Wants to be on exactly the same strategy. They'll both cede the race lead away to Jacob Reed, but lest we forget that they will have the advantage of tyres now to try and push and be a little bit more aggressive than what Jacob Reed has to. He's going to have to be a little bit more conservative with his strategy because of how early he came off of the medium tyres. It's going to be long stops for the pair of them as they now get themselves through 4.3 and 4 seconds respectively. And crucially, Edward Apariari has jumped up into second place. Such is the way they were hung out so long. Edward Apariari having a day.
Amazing. The undercut is so effective here. As you see a little move, Connor Pooler taking a look at Adam Gleeson there over 9th position. Yeah, the undercut is so effective here. We knew that it would be because it's a difficult circuit to overtake on. It's a very traction-dependent circuit, and there you can see the different strategies. A real mix of strategies that we've seen so far in this race. Reed and Apariari, that's the most telling comparison because they both pitted on the same lap and both for the same tyres as well. They've been absolutely flying here. What it should have shown actually was that they started on the medium tyres, as Paul takes another look at Gleeson on the backside of the circuit. But yeah, that's telling because it shows that Apariari is genuinely only 12 seconds behind Reed in the order, as
Radice.
And Radice is off.
Eduardo Radice, who has shown so often that he's got the pace, now finds himself dropping like a stone, and this next group will swallow him up. Van Rensburg and Ray Griffey-Owen is going to try and go through. Cat's already gone by around the outside. That, coming out of the Correntino, is all on his own, and this is what happens when you take a little look the wrong way at the Correntino, just on the curb, and there's no grip on the inside tyres. He just slides out. Now, he does fight back here with Anthony Catt going around the outside of San Donato, meaning he'll go through on this group. But again, Eduardo Radice puts himself in great race positions here, Caitlin, and cannot find the execution to get the result he needs.
I have a feeling we've seen that already this season, actually. Radice making a mistake. Oh yeah, wasn't it at the last race? He spun off on the first lap. Was running in the lead, wasn't he, at Suzuka? So unfortunately, Eduardo Radiz having another big spin. This time just getting a little too much curb and the car getting unsettled, and that is going to cost him a lot of time and a lot of positions. Connor Pooler now on the back of Brad Newman and very nearly running into the back of the medium-tired runner, but getting away with it through the Andettis.
That was so nearly another issue at the Corin Tyre on back-to-back laps. Connor Pooler looking for drive off of the exit there of Bucine. And now onto this front stretch. The long climb to San Donato continues again. Both with DRS here, so it's a case of who's got what. 308 on the straight. Newman slightly less in a straight line. Pooler sweeping around the outside, takes the place away. He'll now look at Kent Nielsen and Adam Gleeson. Gleeson, of course, has just found his way through. George van Rensburg and Florian Kamai in for their second stops of the race.
So now, of course, we've got to start thinking about the second pit window, because Reed and Apari Ari, yeah, they've been out there. I mean, obviously, they haven't been out there for too long. The tyres won't be crying enough just yet, but they have been out there for significantly longer than the likes of Gronkowski and Lux. So they will, of course, be the first ones tasked with thinking about when they're going to make their stops and what they're going to do for the rest of the race. We're looking back now at Connor Pooler once again. He's found his way past Brad Newman, so his next target will be will be Kent Nielsen, just ahead of him. But yes, of course, the second pit window is really going to set us up for the rest of this race, because it will not only determine where the drivers come out in relation to each other, but how many stops we're expecting to see for the rest of this race, and whether some drivers are going to have to do more than others.
It'll be now 5
and Gronkowski is up to second.
He is. He's through on Edward Apari-Ari, as now it's 5 Brits and 2 Austrians. Then inside the top 7, we do know that the Scot, Jordan Gronkowski, in second, has just made his move through up into that second place. But look at how good the racing is at the halfway stage. Lap 28 here of 59 around the Autodromo del Mugello. Right now, Jacob Reed, your race leader, 13 seconds clear, but Gronk is using his tyre advantage to try and claw that gap back down, and at current he is chasing around 0.7 to a second a lap with how he is able to battle around with Jacob Reed, who is trying to manage his tyres at this stage, which have already done 10 laps worth of effort, and he knows that he's going to be stuck on those right now for at least another 8, you'd feel, to go on to a 2-stop strategy. It'll get easier as he goes through. I reckon he's got to get to at least lap 38 if he wants to think about a 2-stop with softs to get himself home.
Yeah, that's a good decision, or good summary of what's going on. But of course, the difficulty with that is that the cars get lighter as the race goes on, and so they use up less and less tyre life. Connor Pooler now going through on Adam Gleeson, so goes through to 6th position with the DRS wide open, and it looks like Kent Nielsen just lost 2 places to Brad Newman and Eduardo Radiz. And talking of the two of them, Radiz gets a double overtake done there up the inside of Brad Newman. Nicely done, getting himself back into that fight and trying to minimize the lost time from his mistake just now, as Anthony Cat pits once again. And that could be telling, actually, because of course Cat was one of the first drivers to pit off of the medium tyres in the first stint. Then of course things started to go a little wrong for him, but even so, he's pitting quite early for this second stint as well, and that could be yes, I think he's setting himself up for a 3-stop.
Yeah, at the halfway stage of the race, he goes on to another set of soft tyres. That's a 3-stop from Anthony Cat, and he's going to need quite a bit of pace to make that work when 2 stops seems to be the order of the day for most drivers near the front of the field. Now, Adam Gleeson's going to have to look behind. Eduardo Radiz is trying to set up another one on the straight, and he's got a rocket ship on the rush to San Donato. He certainly knows how to deal with the power, and I'm quite interested to see how much on a straight line he's able to get here. He goes over 307, 39, 310 Ks up the crest here, and he is absolutely flying on the straights and in the speed trap as well. He is making mincemeat of these overtakes, and that puts him up to 7th. And Doriano Ricciuti here has just dropped to place there. That's Ray Griffioen moving up now into 11th.
Yeah, and importantly, Lux has got past Upari Ari on track as well, so that is for 3rd position. And there is the number 7 of Walter Lux, ahead, of course, of the number 14, Edward Upari Ari. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that even though Gronkowski is understandably a lot quicker than Jacob Reed right now, about a second per lap and catching, Reed's best lap is half a second quicker than Gronkowski's best lap. And what that shows me is that Gronkowski, while he did come out of the pits flying on those soft tyres, he hasn't quite pushed to the same extent that Jacob Reed did on his outlaps. I think Reed felt under pressure to catch and get ahead of Gronkowski and the others in the pit stages, and therefore really went for that qualifying pace immediately after the stop. Gronkowski, I think, knew that he was going to be fast anyway, and just took it a little bit more measured, didn't quite go for broke, and we'll have to wait and see whether he was maybe a little too measured, or whether this is just a sign that Reed is quicker on those soft tyres. Oh, there's a move, a little further down, and that's Nielsen on Newman.
Yep, so Brad Newman loses another one there. Straight through goes Ken, and there's not much that Brad can do about that. He is having a big struggle at this moment as he falls down to 10th place. And this battle at the front of the field is so reminiscent of what happened 2 weeks ago with the all-important scrap at Suzuka, where it did come down to the last lap, and it was Gronk chasing 7 seconds to make that happen, and he'll be chasing a little bit more than that at the moment, because that gap at one stage was up at 15 seconds, but he is trying to chase that back down and give Jacob Reed a little bit of something to worry about here in this race at Mugello, knowing how crucial it is to just stay on the level. And Jordan will know, he's got the support of his father always watching here all these races, and his success has translated to the real world as Gronk's. And Jacob Reed, of course, the pro stripe, is no slouch.
Yeah, good to see plenty of real world racing drivers here, and of course professional iRacers, and those who are very good indeed. Marcus Plashberger, by the way, has just got past Edward Apari-Ari. Radice now past Paula in a straight line. Drivers on the move and making the absolute most of their strategies. Cedric Beale just lost a couple of places a little further down the order. There's Anthony Cat, who has just got past the French driver. But yeah, good strength of field here. These drivers are a heck of a lot better than the average person could ever hope to be. And I know that from experience, having raced Jacob Reed myself. He was a lot better than me back then, and that was maybe 5 years ago. I'd hate to think how good he is now. But anyway, there's Eduardo Radice continuing to push on in this race, and continuing, that wasn't Radice, my apologies, there's Eduardo Radice, continuing to push on in this race, and continuing to make back those positions that he lost with his spin.
Yeah, he's definitely pushing right now, and he knows that Edward Apari-Ari is limping about a little bit, doing 1:21.5 on that last lap. So there's definitely a sense that that gap can be clawed back in, and he can make that move and do so quickly. And all these drivers are looking around at everyone else going, are you soon in that window? That window opens right now in about 5 laps time. If you want to feel comfortable, you can make it to the end on your tyres. And these drivers will look at their soft tyres, and some will have to manage it because of how early they've gone through, not being able to commit to a 3-stop strategy, having to go to a 2, and that gap is cutting down here for Jacob Reed, because on that last lap, he lost another 1.2 seconds. That gap is now 7 seconds, and that is going to be nothing at this current rate in 4 laps.
Indeed, and in fact, Reed's last lap was his first in a while that was in the 1:21s. You can see, well actually no, his last 3 laps have been in the 1:21s, so Gronkowski has really been reeling him in over a second per lap. Brad Newman, meanwhile, gets past Kent Nielsen. That happened at the start of the lap, I think. But yes, as for Jacob Reed, his best lap, of course, is a low 1:19, which is the best lap of the race, full stop. So compared to the absolute best that these tyres have been, he's losing over 2 seconds per lap. And that really shows you just how the tyres begin to fall away as the stint goes on. There's Gronkowski, and he is chasing him down.
He is, but you really get the sense here from Jordan Gronkowski that if he does catch, and at this sort of pace he certainly will, that this is going to be about whether he wants it or not. Whether he wants to have that lap or two of the lead, and when he decides to come in and make his stop compared to Jacob Reed. Now that's Eduardo Radice, who has made back all the time effectively that he's lost, getting past Edward Apari and now getting up into 5th place in this one. Radice is quicker than everyone. He's the fastest driver on track. And there's one thing about Eduardo Radice, and that he drives quicker when he's angry.
He does indeed. We've seen that in the last couple of races, especially at Suzuka last time out. Now we're going almost 3 wide down the straight. Look at that. Through goes George van Rensburg. The two similarly liveried South African drivers, both involved in this battle with Anthony Cat. Cat back on the inside and manages to fend them off. So through goes Anthony Cat, 16th position. Not where he'd want to be in this race, but it's better than where he was before.
Brilliant defence then at Luco. Made sure that the Poggio Secco was not going to be striking twice that time. Down the hill at Casanova. Now flicking through the next sections. That is a great bit of defence, but that gap, and someone has realised this right now, there is a canary in the coal mine, and all of a sudden, it's Jordan Gronkowski, the alarm sounding 5.3. The gap now through the Poggio Secco, as Apari Ari loses another place now, this time to Connor Pooler.
Pooler up to 6th place. He's been driving quite a race. It seems like every time we speak his name, it's because he's either passed someone or been passed, much like at Phillip Island. Kent Nielsen now passing Brad Newman up into that 9th position. And Jake, I'm really starting to think at this point in the race that we're probably only expecting one more stop from both Reed and Gronkowski. And that's why Reed is dropping back so much. He's trying to extend these tyres to where he can put on the mediums and then go to the end. And realistically, I think they can both do that.
I don't think he needs mediums. I think he's trying to extend it to go on to the softs to end this race. I don't think he needs mediums. I think they both use the medium tyre. They want softs all the way to the end. It's a medium, soft race. And Gronkowski's in a much better position than Jacob Reed is at the moment. But Jacob Reed knows he's only got to hit a number, and his job becomes a little bit easier compared to Gronk in the number 5. Red machine, red 5 is starting to charge.
It's a good shout then. So if that is the case, if they're both going on to softs for the final stint of the race, then it's all about when does Reed bolt. I think it's all up to him. Does he wait until Gronkowski passes him and risk, of course, being too late and seeing Gronkowski get an undercut? Or does he try to preemptively stop, hope he's got enough time to the end of the race to make it worth it, and then, of course, end up kind of undercutting Gronkowski, although mainly just defending from the undercut. So we'll have to wait and see what he does regarding that. There's Jason Green fighting Paul O'Regan. These positions may not mean much in the SimSpeed Championship, but they do matter in the iRacing Championship. And of course, in terms of the story of the race as a whole. So through there goes
Paul O'Regan.
Paul O'Regan, my apologies.
Yeah, so O'Regan now moving up into 14th place, is quietly trying to gain more and more, and his quest for another top 10 finishes there. He passes the driver Jason Green. He was the only driver last year to make every single round of the iRacing Grand Prix World Tour at top split level, which is an incredible achievement for Jason Green, who builds most of his iRacing out in the spec race of Fords. He's so involved in that community. He does a very good job there, but you really do get the sense that these drivers are building such a fantastic community. It's been a lot more close-knit who's been in at the top here, but now look at that gap now, under 3.5 seconds. Jacob Reed is hoping to just tap out and say, you know what, I'm reaching that stage, and that stage where he can come in and pit is next lap. That's where you feel that the pit stop window at earliest opens for the 2-stop as Brad and Kent continue to swap here for the final spots in the top 10.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Reed and Radice earlier on in this race, swapping back and forth and back and forth. And it looks like Gleeson just lose a couple of places. Is he in the pits maybe, or has something gone wrong? Gleeson is still dropping places.
Oh, but that's not good.
Here we go.
And, oh, it's on his own. Oh, this is a big accident here. And again, the Poggio Secco strikes straight into the barriers. And a hefty hit is going to put Adam Gleeson out of the race after relatively no pressure at that point. And Mugello is so notorious for striking when you least expect it.
It's a really tricky one. I seem to remember Lando Norris having a crash there when Formula 1 went here in 2020. So unfortunately, Gleeson is in good company, but that won't be good. Won't be making him feel any better about that particular one. Now we have a move. This is for third position. We've got Pleshberger going around the outside of Walter Lux. And wouldn't it be amazing? He's got the place, he's got the move done. And wouldn't it be amazing if he was on the podium in his first race in the SimSpeed Championship of 24, sorry.
Yeah, that would be really big for Marcus Pleshberger, who has shown that he's got some fantastic pace. He just needs the iRacing to go along with it. Eduardo Radice sits patiently, watches these drivers down the hill, out of Savelli and through the two fast Arrabbiata corners, trying to use all of that downforce that's there, that ground effect, making that suction through onto the circuit, through that section. It's a vital bit of equipment used in the tools of these Mercedes W13 performances. Through now at Corintaio corner, and it's going to have to be patience again, because they will have to wait for that long straight if they want that move into San Donato. In comes Jacob Reed.
Oh, Reed in from the lead. So what does he go on to now? Does he risk going to the end on those soft tyres? I think he's got to, because we have seen drivers do 21 laps on softs in the earlier parts of the race. Or is he going to play it potentially safer and go onto the mediums? Probably not. We'll have to wait and see. Here comes Pleshberger now. Lux versus Pleshberger once again. And is that Walter Lux? Oh, and look at Radice getting involved. Radice around the outside and up into third place. So Lux gets second, Radice gets third. Pleshberger has a little twitch but hangs onto it. Meanwhile, Jacob Reed is back on the circuit on another set of softs.
And crucially, he's got out ahead of Brad and Kent on the mediums. That would have really held him up in this race. So that's an important stop. And everybody's diving in. Apariari is in, Ricciuti's in, Siemert's in, Jason Green in, all making their final stops on lap 38.
And Apariari has come out in 11th position. Now remember, he was running second after his earlier stop, although that was a little bit misleading due to the state of the race at the time. I still think he has a good chance of getting into maybe the top 8, potentially even higher than that towards the end of the race, especially considering he's on those fresh, soft tyres now. As here comes Jordan Gronkowski in the lead, leads by 11 seconds over the fight between Lux, Radice and Pleshberger, and he continues on in the race. I doubt that Lyle Pina just had a 0.3 second pit stop. That would have been quite impressive, but anyway, into the pits comes Walter Lux from second. So Radice and Pleshberger go through, and they continue on their way. But the race is really getting real now, and we have to wait to see where Lux is in relation to Reed, and of course Gronkowski when he makes a stop.
About 10 seconds is what he's going to drop there in terms of time, and this is important. How many laps does Jordan Gronkowski give here to one Mr. Jacob Reed that he will then look to use to gain back by superior tyre life and pace? That's the question of the game right now at this point. It was 7 laps he gave him to build up a 15-second margin. He brought that down to about 2 seconds, and I doubt he'll give 7 laps again. I reckon he'll give 3 at most.
Jacob Reed flies through the middle sector of the circuit. You can see the strategies on the bottom of the screen. They're both on 2-stop strategies, but quite different ones in terms of the story of this race. And here comes Jordan Gronkowski into the pits now for his final stop of the day.
Yeah, he's got to come in because he can't give too much of a gap here to Jacob Reed. He knows how important it is that he's got tyres he can go out and attack with. This is his race. Radice is in. Pleshberger is in. Only Connor Pooler stays out. He will take a lap lead in this race. But Jacob Reed will charge up the hill, and it will be a wait for Gronkowski. There is the race lead, and how much time has gone by for Gronk here? John Pat Kelly will be lapped down traffic. He'll have to get through, but that 18.6 from Jacob Reed is a dagger of an outlap.
And look at this, round the outside of Gronkowski, he might get some traffic here, and he just manages to hold off Kent Nielsen for that third position, so he should be okay there. But yes, Reed had an absolute barnstormer of an outlap, which has gained him time in this race, gained him, let's have a look. Well, we'll have to wait until the end of this lap to see what the actual gap is, but it looks to be about 8 or 9 seconds between himself and Gronkowski. That is not the, there we go, 9 seconds. That is not the be-all and end-all, because of course we saw Gronkowski start to reel in a 9-second gap in the first part of this race and in the second part of this race, and now of course he's got to do it again at the very end, and this time he's got to catch Jacob Reed for the win.
He might have to hope that Jacob Reed hits the cliff. It's only a couple of laps of tyre life, but it really has made a huge difference here in terms of when they've come in, what strategy they've got. Gronkowski was the fastest driver when it came to qualifying. He was the fastest in the opening stint. He couldn't be matched by Eduardo Rodis and Jacob Reed, but it's strategy that has put Jacob Reed in front with an absolutely wonderful middle stint. In comes Cedric Beale. He's done with those hard tyres. Kent Nielsen also into the pits then, so he will depart from his position. That will cause those in the middle of the pack a little bit of respite out there, as there goes Pleshberger and Apari Ari, and that is Edward Apari Ari, P7.
Never mind top 8, he's a contender for the top 5 still. Keep an eye on Edward Apari Ari in the latter stages of this race. So Pleshberger, who was running, was challenging for the podium, drops back. And it looks like the only driver not on soft tyres in these late stages of the race is Brad Newman. Are we expecting, we've got to be expecting Brad Newman to pit again, right?
Yeah, so we expect him to come in for softs, and he will make that call. He's only made the one pit stop so far at this stage on lap 19, so he's gone 23 laps here on his set of medium tyres, and surely he will look at diving into the pits very soon. In comes Connor Pooler then from the race lead, so Jacob Reed will not be held up in this race. That is a massive call for him right now, knowing he's got that 9.8, almost 10-second margin now over Jordan Gronkowski, who can't match Jacob Reed in the early stages. But we have to remember, Jacob Reed is so good about getting the early life out of the tyres. Gronkowski is so much better on the softs, long stint, long haul.
Well, that's the thing, because if you look at the best laps and the laps they've just set, Jacob Reed is in the 18.6s and 18.7s. Gronkowski only in the 1.19.0s at this point in time. So the gap is not coming down, it's extending for Jacob Reed here. I'm also expecting a good lap from Ray Griffio to come in on this lap, because he is going very quickly, 1.19.3, and that just puts into perspective, as Brad Newman comes out of the pits in 12th position, that just puts into perspective the speed that Reed has, as I think Pleshberger just got back past Eduardo Pariari.
Yep, so they're all going through once again. Seems like Brad Newman and Kent Nielsen, they cannot leave each other alone in this race. There is Jacob Reed, that gap now 10 seconds right now, and some simply magical lap times being found down the hill through Casanova and Savelli, and now the two Arrabbiata corners for Nielsen and for Newman. Newman in front. Now you can get a run out of the second Arrabbiata, but it is tough to find the move at the plateau braking zone of Scarperia, moving through Pelagio and now towards the Correntino. This might be where the setup is, but again, Kent Nielsen very happy, very poised here in the middle of this race, just to keep himself in range, attacking the Biondettis, and now this is where he might get cheeky, try and find a move, but he doesn't go for it at Bucine. Now it's about priorities on exit.
Anthony Catt into the pits. There's the 3-stopper that we were talking about. I think he's the only driver to be on a 3-stopper race today. Here is Kent Nielsen with that overspeed on the straight. That was always going to be a relatively easy maneuver there, and does get through into 11th place in this race now. But still some changing around to go in these late stages. Florian Kammer looking decent after his first lap spin and getting involved in this scrap. And that's a good shot there, not one that you could realistically get in the real world. We sit on his rear tyre as he catches up to the back of Brad Newman.
Yeah, he's certainly hoping, and you're really getting a sense of the pace here and how much you get jostled and you oscillate around a circuit like this. It's not as smooth as people think race circuits are. There is still a little bit of bump around there that they have to deal with. Gronkowski, fastest lap of the race, 18.646, 3/10 off of Jacob Reed on that last lap, but with 15 laps to chase down 9 seconds, 3/10 of a second's not going to get it done. He needs 6/10 of a second a lap from here to the end of the race if he wants any shot of victory.
Yes, but he's found the pace. His tyres are up to temperature now, and the gap will probably begin to shrink from here. I guess the difficulty is just how much he's got to make it shrink by, as Ray Griffioen gets up into 9th place ahead of George van Rensburg, and Kamai actually pits. So sorry, I didn't know we were waiting for one more stop from the Austrian. But yes, the thing with Gronkowski is that it always takes a little while for the tyres to get up to temperature when he comes out of the pits. Reed was able to be on it right from the start, but of course Reed has to go much further into this race. He's got to go right to the end on these soft tyres, and who knows, the tyres may well hit the cliff towards the end. For Gronkowski, it's all about pressure and knowing that he has the advantage when it comes to the rubber touching the road.
Well, the one thing that Jacob Reed's dealing with now is lap traffic. That is just out of the pits, Florian Kammeyer, that he's just had to get through. Cedric Beale will be next to navigate, and of course he doesn't want to be held up in any way, shape or form. Now, the iRacing rules of the road state that any blue flags in any series are considered advisory, not mandatory, and as such, they are in essence using GT blue flag rules. Of course, etiquette in a series like this is that you do pull out of the way for those who are a lap quicker.
It's just like good old-fashioned Formula One as George van Rensburg hits. But yeah, one of the things that makes footage of Ayrton Senna lapping Monaco sweeping past the backmarkers so impressive is that the backmarkers weren't actually obliged to get out of the way back in those days. They just kind of did because they knew who was coming up behind them. And it's a very similar thing in this series as well. No one wants to be responsible for changing the fate of the race. You've just got to get out of the way and hope that you don't end up holding anyone up. Yeah. The trouble, of course, is if you're in a race of your own, if you're in a race with yourself, then of course you don't want to lose too much time in the process.
This would be a wonderful recovery by Eduardo Radice if he can make the move on Volta Lux. This one would be for the podium here today at Mugello, and this would be big for Radice after his spin, of course, and he now uses all of that toe and will just breeze by Volta Lux, who finds that it's Eduardo Radice who illuminates by him and gains another place. P3, a brilliant run from Radice, who could have been fighting for the race win today.
Illuminates by him, that's a great phrase to use. He is lighting up the track right now, and I think if he finishes on the podium after that spin that we saw earlier, that would be very impressive indeed. And of course, just as in Suzuka, he'll end up kicking himself about what might have been. Eduardo Ari is going to have a fight with Conor Paula towards the end of this race. Looking at those times, you have to say it might not actually be much of a fight at all. Conor Paula a lot quicker at this point in time, with a 9/10 advantage on the last lap, about an 8/10 average advantage over the last 3 laps. And when it comes to that sort of speed, you expect that they will probably get past you on the straight and then get away relatively easily at a track like this. But here's Paula, still got to catch him, still got to avoid losing too much time in the dirty air, and then of course he will be up into the top 6 in the last 10 to 12 laps of this race. Radice goes fastest.
Top 5 not out of the realms of possibility there. That 18.6 from Radice is the quickest lap of the race, and he will have the SimSpeed Championship bonus point, but it's taken by this man, Conor Paula, looking to the inside, taking it away from Edward Apari-Ari, moves up into 6th place, and as such now has 9 SimSpeed Championship points.
We've got our own little qualifying battle here. The top 4 fastest laps that we've seen in this race have been within a 10th of a second of each other, all 1:18.6s from Paula, from Radice, Gronkowski and Reed. And Paula, of course, using that to his advantage. A lot of that lap time would have come from the intense slipstream effect that he would have got down that start-finish straight this time around. And like you say, plenty of sim speed points going his way if he is to finish like this, and an extra point for that fastest lap. There's Jacob Reed completing another lap time and keeping that gap very stable to Jordan Gronkowski behind. He's just got to do that 11 more times.
Jordan Gronkowski over the line, 119.8, and he might be overdriving it slightly. This is Jacob Reed at his level best. He has outthought Jordan Gronkowski here today, and if you thought that this was going to be a runaway day once more where Gronkowski would go 4 in a row and try and get things sorted, remember that Jacob Reed is the reigning champion. Remember that Jacob Reed is so brilliant when he gets to it. Pula with an 18.4, finding some fantastic pace here with the fuel loads a little bit lower. Marcus Pleschberger might not get a top 5 on debut here at Mugello.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a shame from Pleschberger, actually. Earlier on in this race, after his, I think he was 3rd in the qualifying order, I was expecting to see him fight amongst the top bunch, and he did for quite a long time. But the latter stages have not been going his way. Conor Pula, meanwhile, has played this to perfection, and look at the lap times. 1.6 seconds faster that last time around. Shows you the pace that he can show when he's clear of those slower cars, with no disrespect to anyone he's passed in the last few laps. And 118.4 rather does break our little qualifying battle that we see for that final fast lap point.
Yeah, and Conor Pula has been really scintillating in terms of the late stages. In the back half of last year, he was knocking on the door of podiums and picking up a couple of them to boot, and here he is really showcasing what he's all about, and this time it's a little bit different. So 119.3, but he's trying to build up that margin here. 1.3 seconds to Marcus Pleschberger, the final driver inside the top 5, and he realizes a top 5 today at Mugello would be huge in the development of Conor Pula.
He's reached that buffer there where he started to get the dirty air of Pleschberger that hasn't yet got the DRS to pass him with on the straight, but I'm sure that he will get close enough this next time around, and then of course we will have that fight for 5th position with just 10 laps to go in this race. As for the fight for the lead, it's looking less likely as the race is going on, I'm afraid to say, but Jacob Reed, if he wins this, will have thoroughly deserved it. That undercut strategy that he pulled at the start of this race was very much a case of, I wonder if I can do this, I bet I can do this, and then he did. And of course for Gronkowski, I suppose he couldn't really have known without stringent testing that you could actually run the soft tyres for so long and not lose enough time to make it not worth it anymore. So Jacob Reed has played this to perfection. That shows you the advantage that a brain like his can give you in a race like this one.
Now, we've got to talk championship here, Caitlin, in these early stages of the season. Gronkowski here taking a second, Jacob Reed with a win. It will pull that gap from 34 points in the championship down to 27. I don't see this as a loss for Jordan Gronkowski because he will still have a full race margin lead in the SimSpeed Championship heading to Sebring.
And you've got to remember, this is the longest championship that you've ever seen in terms of a Grand Prix season. So of course, there is plenty of time still to go. 27 points really aren't as important as they used to be. So yeah, it's definitely not lost yet for Jordan Gronkowski. Far from it. It's not lost for anyone. As Jacob Reed now with the DRS will go past the back markers, and he will say thank you very much for pulling out of the way there and not before the activation zone, because that will actually help him a little bit. And as for their last laps, Reed 1:19.9, Gronkowski 1:19.9. You don't need to be a mathematician to know that the gap hasn't changed much.
No, it really hasn't, and that is crucial. Getting by Lyle Pienaar was a real great bastion that Jacob Reed has had to deal with over the course of this race, because he knows that it's a long way to George van Rensburg at this moment. He may catch him before the end of the race, but that's the next one there. Look at this gap though, 1.1, teetering on the edge of 1 second, and the DRS, Marcus Pleshberger, is doing just, and I mean just, enough at the moment to hold Conor Pooler. Top 10, by the way, not yet decided. Brad Newman has just come into the pits, and I think he wants the championship bonus point.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, do you get a point for top 10? Sorry, do you get a point for fastest lap if you're outside the top 10?
No, but you take it away.
Yes, so you would take it away from someone else. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I will keep an eye on Brad Newman in that one as well.
Long stop.
Probably a problem there for Brad Newman. It's also worth noting, I think Reed will catch George van Rensburg to put him a lap down before the end of this race. Although, with it being one car running on his own, I don't imagine that van Rensburg will hold him up too much. And I think that Reed should get away fairly lightly with that one.
I haven't seen any contact for Brad Newman, so I think that might just be him getting done then with that. And that would be a real shame, because he was having a very nice, very solid run. Could be technical issues that he's running into out there. We don't quite know what it is, but Brad Newman, I think, will be one of the latest retirements in this race. And that is a shame to see from him out there. 7 laps then to go. It might even be that he hit the incident limit. That might be something that could have happened, which has caused him to be in there, but I think it's more technical than anything else, and I think Brad Newman is officially out, as here comes Florian Kammerer looking for 17th against Lyle Pienaar.
Still 19 cars remaining in this race though. That's more than enough for a good Grand Prix. We've actually had races start with fewer cars than that. But here we are on board with Florian Kammerer now, P18. DRS flaps wide open. The German will have basically a double DRS here, with Pienaar also benefiting from Cedric Beal up ahead of them. Up the inside he goes. And this is going to be an example of a classic Mugello overtake. Now, there is a bit of grip out there on the outside, as Lyle Pienaar is demonstrating, but then, of course, you have these sweepers. Florian Kammerer is able to benefit through there and get up into 17th position as the race continues up at the front.
Lyle Pienaar there, just catching the inside curbs there, those sausage curbs, and as such had to really slow down through Luco Corner, and just like that, everybody there, 9 tenths now. Conor Pooler knocking on the door, and there finally exiting the pits is Brad Newman, who'll be back out and away in 20th position then, and 2 laps down here. So not quite sure what happened. We will have to try and catch up with him maybe after the race, exactly where it went wrong, but there is your race leader. Jacob Reed, a return to form for the Worcester man, who has shown that he is not to be discounted in this championship. When you consider that it was technical issues that kept him out of the opening round, he would be a lot closer to Jordan Gronkowski than he currently is.
Yeah, remember, he didn't even start the first race of the season. It was a big shame. He was intending to, but then disconnected right before the race start, and there was nothing he could do at that point. But since then, he's been a little bit of a sensation. Admittedly, no one has really dominated this championship, which is what we love to see, because with a championship this long, it is a little bit of a threat that you might get someone turning up who's much better than the other drivers and just winning absolutely everything there is to win. But luckily that has not happened yet this season. But if anyone's going to, it's going to be between Jacob Reed and Jordan Gronkowski, who have been the sensations of the season. Eduardo Radice as well, good job in this race, running in 3rd position. I think if he can iron out some mistakes later on in the season, you really can't count him out for some strong results. Maybe a late title challenge, although it's still a bit too early to be talking about things like that. And then, of course, the drivers who have been impressive in this race specifically. Conor Pooler has done better than usual and still has a chance of a top 5 finish. And I've never even heard of Marcus Pleshberger before, but he's doing a great job in 5th place.
He is, he's driving really well out there, and I think he's just keeping Conor Pooler at bay, and this is so frustrating. The toughest barrier to break in terms of bringing down a gap is breaking 1 second because it is so agonizing, it is so close, and Pleshberger is doing, I mean, just enough at this moment in time to make that happen. I also want to give a massive shout to Paul O'Regan, who looked like he was odds on for about a 15th to 16th place finish here today. He is 11th. And again, he's proving that he is always a threat for the top 10. He's only 6 seconds off of Ray Griffey-Owen.
Yeah, if something happens up in front of him, he's in prime position for a top 10 finish. Looks like Florian Kamai just passed Cedric Beal for P16 as well. Those two a lap down in this race. And there is the gap between O'Regan and Griffey-Owen, about 6 seconds of a gap. And admittedly, it's not coming down by enough for Paul O'Regan, but of course, he's just got to hold on and hope something happens up in front of him. As for Conor Paula, you're right that this is frustrating for him, because I keep seeing on my interval that he's within a second behind Marcus Plashbauer, but he's Pleshberger, sorry. But he never does that in the activation zone, DRS activation zone, coming into the last corner, which is the really important point on the road. So here we are on board with Conor Paula, and that's the thing that matters.
He sort of wants Marcus Pleshberger to take that MotoGP long lap penalty, which is there around the outside of the car and tyre. That's what he's hoping for right now. He's not going to get it. But again, he is just teetering on 1.1, 1.2, and Marcus Pleshberger is doing all that he needs to cover off this move, to cover off this momentum. But keep in mind, there are moves that could be made in and around that top 10. Kent Nielsen, by the way, could take one, but because Doriano Ricciuti here is going to be a little bit prone in the final stages. Nielsen took 1.2 out of him on that last lap.
Indeed, there are Ricciuti and Nielsen. Kent Nielsen going to gain significantly again. Look at the lap times. Lap 56 there. And he gains, well, not so much, but again, that could just be because he's reached that buffer, the buffer of turbulent air that you reach as you're cornering, and cornering behind someone specifically. But yeah, Doriano Ricciuti as well, another driver who's been impressive today, was involved in a few little scraps earlier.
Well, keep an eye on this here, Caitlin, because you've got Walter Lux here, who is now falling backwards into the clutches of Pleshberger and Pula. This is big. I think Conor Pula's pushing Marcus Pleshberger so much, they're going to catch fourth place here.
I wonder if that's partly why Pula hasn't really attacked Marcus Pleshberger too much, because he knows that they're gaining enough on Walter Lux, sorry. But the reason I haven't brought this up before is because I've been watching the lap times between them, and it hasn't quite. Well, admittedly, before it was before it was remaining quite steady. It was remaining maybe 2 or 3 tenths per lap. But you're right, now it is about half a second that Pleshberger is gaining on Walter Lux. So he is getting closer. I think his tyres are in better shape. Meanwhile, Brad Newman has got that fastest lap after his 1 lap pit stop, basically. So unless someone else snatches it in the late stages, which is unlikely, I think the fastest lap award will go to Brad Newman. Whoa, it's a 1:17.8, so he's the first driver to do it in under 1:18.
Yeah, he's definitely got something there, but old Father Time is knocking on the door, which means that we will have there or thereabouts 1 lap of racing left, being led by this driver, Jacob Reed, who has been absolutely fantastic here today. And after the one mistake he made at Suzuka, outbraking himself into the Hitachi Atsumo chicane to end his race and ultimately end up with second for the 3rd consecutive race. This is a statement performance that he's got at the moment. Keep an eye on Marcus Pleshberger, because that gap is closing between himself and Walter Lux on the final lap here. So 4th, 5th and 6th still could be undecided. In fact, Pleshberger right now is going to go around the outside as he tries to go through. This is what's happened here to Conor Pula. He's spun it around, then overthrew Pelagio, and that means he's completely out of the fight for this one for 4th place. Pleshberger, close, but he's now going to need to be a little bit coy where he wants to make this move. But Lux, of course, the dirty air is going to play a huge factor. It might just be a rush over to the line. Nielsen on the final lap is going to get the pass done on Doriano Ricciuti, and he's going to get through, but out then through towards Bucci. This is a race that Jacob Reed so desperately has wanted. It has taken him 5 rounds to get to this, but Jacob Reed proves that he is the Tuscany Raider. He wins at Mugello.
And it's going to be a 10-second victory in the end over Jordan Gronkowski. He played that very, very well indeed with the massive undercut that he got earlier on in the race. Remember, he didn't just undercut Gronkowski, but also Radice, who then went on and spun and potentially cost himself an opportunity to get second place from Gronkowski at the end. Walter Lux has got Marcus Pleshberger on the last lap of the race, or fended him off, sorry, so he will finish 4th. Pleshberger 5th. Paula holds on to 6th despite the last lap spin. Eduardo Pari very impressive in 7th place. We haven't seen much of him in the latter stages of the race, but in the mid part of the race he was extremely impressive indeed. And then here's the fight between Kent Nielsen and Doriano Ricciuti, which will go the way of Kent Nielsen on the last lap, who swept around the outside into turn 1. By the way, the last driver in the top 10 will be Ray Griffioen in his first race of the year, the Dutch driver picking up P10.
Yeah, Griffioen doing well out there, getting the result that he was hoping for here today, but what a drive by him. One Mr. Jacob Reed will have the biggest smile on his face because he knows how important today was. 10.6 seconds over Jordan Gronkowski. It was looking like it was going to be set up for a 4th straight win for him, but some masterful mid-race strategy put Jacob Reed in the driver's seat, and he just simply did not look back from that point onwards. Eduardo Radice had a big spin today, finished only 6 seconds off of Jordan Gronkowski. It could have been so much more for Eduardo in this race on home soil, with the 2 Austrians, Walter Lux and Marcus Pleshberger, 4th and 5th. Connor Pooler in chase of Pleshberger would spin on the penultimate lap of the race through Pelagio, which means he will consolidate his 6th place finish, with Edward Apari Ari in 7th and 8th, belonging to Kent Nielsen. He'd outlast Doriano Ricciuti in 9th. Ray Griffioen will pick up 1 SimSpeed Championship point in position number 10. Just outside of that top 10 for the 2nd time this season, Paul O'Regan finishes in 11th, with Klaus Siemetz making sure it's 12th place for him, ahead of Anthony Catt down in 13th. It was then Jason Green and George Van Rensburg, the final finisher, on the leading lap, with Florian Kammeyer, the first of the drivers, a lap down. He was backwards at turn 2 today in this race, with Cedric Beale and Lyle Pienaar a lap down. Also to John Pat Kelly. Brad Newman would steal the fastest lap, bonus points away from everyone. No points here today in that regard. But then your retirees, Adam Gleason at their brilliant turn 3, the Poggio Secco, and then Mark Van Dalen finding troubles, of course, heading through the Pelagio, and Dan Piazza couldn't even make turn 1 today. Such was his contact with Brad Newman on the opening push forward. Now, what we talk about with March and February, Caitlin, is normally Sebring. This bumpy circuit is going to be one that you love because, of course, this replicates the Miami round, and you can't get closer to Miami than saying, welcome to Florida, welcome to Sebring.
Indeed, if you're going to talk about circuits that have only hosted one Formula One Grand Prix, this one, of course, hosted the USA Grand Prix back in 1959. But seeing modern Grand Prix cars around here is going to be quite a spectacle. It's ridiculously bumpy. The curbs are there waiting to catch you out. You can really skate the car around on those. There are barriers, there's grass, and it's an extremely long circuit as well. So plenty for the drivers to learn and to get used to before next race.
Yeah, and that next race is May 3rd, so that will be 2 weeks away. If you cannot wait for it, you will just have to, but you can catch all of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour with us on SimSpeed TV. If you found us for the first time, you can watch the opening 4 rounds over, of course, on YouTube and Facebook if you haven't had the chance to already. But from everyone that's got it done here today, from Jay Kennedy in the production truck, from Caitlin Penny alongside me, my name has been Jake Sperry. It is a return to the top. It's taken him 5 races to get there, But crucially, Jacob Reed is making the big statement. He wants to challenge Jordan Gronkowski for this title. He is the one driver close enough to make it happen. And when these two are trading P1 and P2 over the start of the season, everybody else has to play catch up from this point onwards. Some brilliant racing out there, but a Tuscany raider he was. Jacob Reed takes an important victory as Sebring awaits on the horizon.